Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. I am Edward, if you happen to be a first time listener. I also kind of go by the pseudonym The Lightkeeper online, so that's why the podcast has its unique title of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. So now that that's out of the way, before we dive into all things kind of edgy on this week's podcast, um, probably a little bit about some of the excitement I've had since we last chatted. And actually, believe it or not, I do have kind of some exciting things to share. The first thing, and I know you probably are going to think this might not be super exciting, but I have joined the world over on Pinterest. So if you're on Pinterest, head on over, search for me, Chatting with the Lightkeeper, just like this lovely podcast, and you'll find my little slice of Pinterest. It's kind of a new adventure. I'm honestly not really sure how Pinterest totally works yet. It sort of seems wonky to me. It probably seems wonky because I haven't figured it out, and I probably should have read like a how-to guide before I jumped in. Then it probably wouldn't seem wonky, but I did that, and I'm there. So if you're on Pinterest and would not be opposed to connecting with somebody who shares, BDSM, DS, or kinktastic sort of things, um, go ahead and follow me or say hi, have a conversation. But Pinterest is a new experiment for me. That so far so good. And next up, as far as experiments go, it's really not an experiment. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I finally sat down and did it. It took me a few weeks to sort of figure out what I was doing because I refused to do it the easy peasy way and pay somebody to do it for me or to use one of those cheesy um, sort of do it yourself builder type shenanigan things that are out there. But I actually built a website. I have my own website now, and I'm kind of proud of it. In fact, I am proud of it. It is obviously not the greatest, best thing ever because I'm a novice at it. So obviously, please understand that. But chattingwiththelightkeeper.com is a thing. It is the home to I have all my writings are going to be there. My poetry is going to be is there. Writings and poetry are there. Also, just like on my Tumblr blog where I've blogged for years. Tuesdays is the anonymous question day. Anybody can submit questions anytime leading up to it. And on Tuesdays, the answers to those questions that you've asked get answered. And the beautiful thing is, you can ask them completely anonymously. You don't need to share your email address with me. You don't need to share your name. You can make up a name. You can use your real name, or you can leave that spot blank. So it allows for you to ask those things that you're curious about the lifestyle without having to reveal anything about yourself. So that is also set up there. You can listen to this lovely podcast right from the website. It's all right there. So it's absolutely fantastic. Plus, of course, there are links to all my socials out there besides just Pinterest. There's Facebook, there's I almost said Twitter, but it's X now, Instagram, and there is Threads. And that's another social media thing I'm kind of curious about is have you or do you use Threads? I actually have found that I enjoy Threads. It's social media that I actually enjoy. So far, there's not a DM button. There's no direct messaging, which is kind of nice. And yeah, it's been a fun experience. I like Threads. So if you haven't tried Threads, I would recommend giving it a try. And once again, I'm chatting with Lightkeeper. So if you are there or are going to try it out, feel free to say hi. There's no DM, so you can't, slide in and say, "Hey, I'm so and so from, Fat Life or wherever we might know each other from or could be connected with." But you can, of course, since Threads is connected to Instagram, you could slide into the DMs on on the gram, or you could just, do the little hot symbol and let me know that way. But either way, please check it out, and please do check out the website. And if you do go check the website, drop me a note either on one of my socials or an email, and let me know what you think of it. I would very much enjoy that. And so that's been the excitement in my life, building a website. And at times I wanted to bang my head against the wall because so much of the information out there on how to do it is written by people who are very experienced, and they forget that there are very inexperienced people reading their how-to guides and going, I have no idea what this means because they're using all the latest, greatest tech speak, and I don't speak tech. At least, well, not that type of tech. I speak another language in tech. So it was challenging. Had to figure out and learn a lot, ask and bug friends that are techies and say, hey, what does this mean? Okay, now that you've told me what it means, can you tell me what it means in plain English? So it was an adventure, and I'm kind of proud of it. So please check that out and let me know what you think. Um, of course, let me know if you see something that is goofy or wonky or doesn't work, because those things happen. And yeah, I need to. I'm sure they're there, and just sort of like anything, when you write something and you don't have somebody else proofread it, you miss things because we know what it means. We wrote it, but somebody reading it for the first time might not get what we mean, or we've left out a very important word, or we've typed something wrong that should be, spell checker says, oh, yeah, that's a word, but it doesn't mean what we think it means. So there's all of that good stuff. So let me know what you see. And if you find something wonky or goofy, let me know that too, so I can do a quick fix and get that taken care of. But now that that is all out of the way, let's move into this week's actual lifestyle fun and games. And I apologize for my throat being a little wonky. My allergies are kind of kicking in today. I spent all day yesterday outside working around the house, and my allergies are apparently are kicking in from that experience. So this week we are going to talk about edge play. And edge play, perhaps your first thought, if you haven't heard of it, you're going to think edge, meaning it could be like a straight edge or the edge on the blade of a knife, or it could mean edge as in it's just sort of edgy play, dangerous play. And it's called edge play because it's dangerous. It can involve knives and sharp things, but there's also more to it. There's really three areas. In this is generally because once again, BDSM is very, what does that mean to you? So when somebody says edge play, it's very important to ask what that means to them. But traditionally, it's three general areas. It's knife or sharp object play, it's breath play, or it's fire play. And so we're going to talk about those three things. Now, I am not going to. This is not going to be a how-to guide. So if you are curious about any of those, experimenting with them, we are going to talk about them, um, but we are not going to talk about actually how to do them because these are all things that can be dangerous. That's why they're called edge. In a way, you're sort of living on the edge with them. And if you want to learn how to do them or have them done to you, if you want them done to you, the best thing is to learn how to do them so that when you're with somebody who is going to do them to you, you know whether they know what they're doing or not. So the best way to learn that, in my opinion, is not through watching a YouTube or an instructional video out there, but to actually go to an in-person class or an event and learn from somebody who is an expert in the community on how to do it. So, this podcast is not going to be how to do it, but we are going to talk about things that go on while it's done. We're just leaving the how to part of it all out. So, let's start with why people enjoy edge play. First of all, it's sort of dangerous, and we all no. not everybody, but a lot of people have a little bit of their Austin Powers in them. Like, oh, I too like to live dangerously. We all have that little bit where we have a side of our personality where we like to be a little edgy, take a risk. And once again, for everybody, what is taking a risk for me might be different than taking a risk for you. It's all very subjective, but we all tend to have that bit of wanting to wanting to push the envelope for us individually, and whatever that envelope is, we typically have that. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast and you think, well, I really don't, I'm very, very calm and mellow. I don't really push edges or want my edges pushed. That's not me. Okay. You've ventured into the world of BDSM and kink here. So in a way, yeah, you've kind of pushed your boundaries and pushing what society says is a boundary just by listening to this podcast. So even if you think you're very much not into this sort of thing, you might surprise yourself. But the main reason why people find edge play appealing is, of course, the adrenaline rush. There's a huge adrenaline rush with it. Um, it also is something that requires trust, a huge amount of trust. You really have to trust the person that you are engaging in edge play with because it's dangerous. If they do it wrong, they can seriously hurt you or kill you. Um, I know it's not fun to say kill you or result in your death. I thought about when I thought about recording this podcast, I thought about reading that section from the back of a ski area lift ticket or the agreement you sign because you now have to sign legal agreements at ski areas to go skiing here in the States. And of course, there is a whole section on serious injury and death, which is quite comical to read the way lawyers have written those things and try to make them seem not so scary, but yet still have that meaning. So I thought about doing something like that, but that would probably get a little boring. And since it appeals to my unique sense of humor, I thought, well, we'll leave that out. But anyways, let's say, you really, really completely have to trust the person you're with and know beyond a doubt that they know what they are doing with these things. Because if you just think that they know, or you assume that they know, and you don't know, you can really put yourself at risk. And of course, the thing about edge play too is it pushes boundaries. These are things that, you know, oh my goodness, people in the vanilla world just would be like totally flabbergasted by if you told them about them. So let's start with knife play. People enjoy using knives, and these knives are not necessarily always knives. Sometimes they're just sharp objects. And there's the double-edged sword, if you will, where using this object, sharp, edgy object, where it creates a sensation uh, of a mixture of fear and pleasure, because depending on how it's done, it can just be a sensation of the blade touching the skin, or it can be deeper where the blade or object is scratching, sort of like a one of those back scratchers, or if you've had your back scratched by somebody who has fingernails, a feeling like that. Which, when you combine it with a power exchange, can be very erotic and very stimulating. And then sometimes it even goes deeper, where there are people who enjoy being lightly by these objects. So you can have all of that, sort of any mixture of that combined together when you work with a knife or a sharp object. So obviously, it's very important to have the skill and control to understand that the object that is being used to do this um, is doing exactly what you want, whether it's just the feeling of the blade on the skin, or if it's a scratching feeling, or if there is actually, you know, physical cutting, breaking of the skin happening, that it is just very, very superficial and it is not going to deep. So it's very important to have a partner who understands this and knows what they are doing. Now, I personally, sort of in full disclosure mode, using knives is something that is just it's a hard limit for me. It's not something that appeals to me at all. It just isn't my jam. Now, I respect people who it is their jam. It's something they enjoy or want to explore. I completely get it, and I'm completely fine with it. But it's just for me, it's not my jam. Now, you don't necessarily have to use a knife because a knife, let's face it, can be a trigger for many people. There are sort of things called out there called finger claws or kitty claws, and they're little, almost like extensions that fit on the tips of your fingers that have a sharp end to them. They're kind of designed to lightly scratch the skin, um, sort of almost converting your hand or a finger or a couple of fingers into um, cat's claws. So once again, obviously with cat claws, you know that a cat can claw you and draw blood, or it can just be a scratch. And that's what these finger claws um, allow. And it's not a knife, so they may not be a trigger for some. And there is a bit more of a playful vibe to using, finger claws versus a actual bladed weapon or bladed instrument. Um, and they can do the psychological side of things very much. Edge play is very psychological. It very much sort of plays on internal feelings of fear, excitement, control for the person doing it. Um, really can enhance a dominant submissive dynamic because the person who is having the instrument used on them is very much making themselves submissive to the person who has the instrument or the control. So it's very, very much a psychological as it is physical. In fact, I would argue with any type of edge play, it's more psychological than physical. Now, the cool thing about those little kitten claws or cat claws or finger claws, whatever term you want to put on them, they are kind of come in a variety of manners. First of all, they do make them out of stainless steel or other durable type metals. I'm not a um, person who is an expert in various types of metals, but it's very important that if no matter what type of instrument you have, that sterilization is a big part of the game before and after being used to make sure that they're good, but you have the metal claws. Then they do make them out of plastic or some sort of plasticky type material. I guess we could call it a resin. They're lighter, they're more flexible, they are less intimidating, which can be a benefit. But they can still be very, very effective. And then, of course, since we're doing sort of, kitten cat claw type things here, they do make them in decorative varieties, where they sort of have sort of gemstones, paint, very, very much to make them fun in a way so that they can have the less serious, be a lighthearted looking DS BDSM kinky toy, which can also help for somebody who might be intimidated by having something with a sharper or sharp edge on it. If it looks pretty and maybe it's done up like Hello Kitty, it's very much less intimidating, say, than somebody who is going to use an actual knife for something like this. So there's those, and those are great sort of a great way if this is something you're curious about to start with this down this road because it is using the little finger claws is much less intimidating than somebody who might, for example, want to use a knife. So keep that in mind if that appeals to you. Now, of course, there are some safety considerations specific to this. First of all, obviously, we have to have explicit and informed consent that, of course, is revocable. Limits and safe words, we have to discuss them and understand them beforehand and only play and engage in this type of thing with somebody we trust so that if you safe word, you know that it will be respected immediately. Hygiene is very important with any type of toy in this regard because they need to be clean and sterilized, just to simply prevent infections because we are riling up, even if we're not digging in, we are riling up the skin cells. So it's very important that we have clean, disinfected toys to do this with. And once again, with this, it's very important that the control or the person doing this starts gradually and slowly builds things up, even if you're just doing it lightly so it feels like a back scratcher type of sensation. It's very important to start very gently and gingerly and then increase the intensity to wherever it is that you and your partner or partners want to go with it. So those are very, very important things to talk about and have in mind when you're doing anything with sort of a sharp, cutty instrument. Um, so please keep that in mind. Now we are going to move on to probably, I would say this is going to be the most popular form of edge play, and that is breath play. This is where you the dominant is actually um, controlling or restricting the breath of the submissive or the bottom during a scene. And it doesn't necessarily actually have to be controlling or restricting, it can just also be the fear of that. For example, just putting if you're a dominant or top, putting your hand on the submissive or bottom's throat. It's not, you don't actually have to do anything more than put your hand there for it to have an incredible mental stimulation. You're not actually controlling or restricting their breath. You just are sort of mentally saying, I could if I wanted to, which, of course, can be very, very impactful mentally. Um, in the past relationship, that was the extent of breath play. It was just the sort of the threat of I could do this, which mentally did amazing things for my submissive, and it was one of her favorite parts when we would play to do that. But there was actually no restriction or controlling of the breath. It was just the excuse me, the mental side of it that was absolutely fantastic. That made it her GM. So understand that breath play can and be about actually physically controlling or restricting breath, or it can just be the mental side of I could do this if I wanted to. I mean, you are helpless. You are under my control. I could if I wanted to, but I'm not going to because it's a limit for you, but you like the threat of it. So there's lots of ways to engage in it. Um, you can do it by putting your hand over somebody's mouth to, mouth or nose or combine both of them to inhibit their ability to breathe or force them to breathe, sort of rebreathe air that they've already breathed by doing that. Um, there's that method. You can actually physically choke somebody, which, if you're going to do that or have that done to you, make sure for the love of Pete that the person doing it, that they know what they're doing. And once again, that's why I say if you're a submissive or a bottom, understand how to do it. Know how to do it yourself so you know immediately if this person knows what they're doing or not. And I guess that's also where trust becomes very important. You have to 100% trust this person with your life. It's that simple. There's no other way to say it. This is something that obviously we're humans, and I guess you could all say that we all have a fetish for oxygen because if we don't get our oxygen, we do die. That's just part of being a human. And we are engaging in a type of play that can restrict or eliminate us getting that oxygen that we need to be living and breathing humans. So it's very important that you completely trust the person that you are doing this with. Now, in addition to the hand over the mouth or choking, another thing that is popular, and you will see pictures of it if you haven't already, but is the use of gas mask. It might seem odd the first time you see somebody engaged in a BDSM scene wearing a gas mask. Oftentimes, these gas masks are, sort of military surplus left over from who knows when. So they are, obviously military spec, very unattractive pieces. But what a gas mask or a mask like that does is it restricts breathing. If you've never breathed through a gas mask, you obviously have to breathe harder because you have to pull the air into your mask and push the air out of your mask through the filtering process designed to filter out, the evil gases out there that are trying to kill you from the enemy. So a gas mask is something that can restrict somebody's breathing. And while they do allow, obviously, people to breathe through them, there are modifications people make to make it harder, even harder to pull the air in and through it and out of it. So gas masks can be fun to explore that with. However, you have to understand once again, trust is very important here because you're putting a mask over your face. So it is going to make it harder for the person in the mask to be understood when they speak. And if it is something where you are having your oxygen or your air intake restricted, or it is restricting for you, um, because it sort of can play on the mental things, or like I said, they can be altered to it. It can make it hard to talk and be understood, and with the face pretty much covered except for the eye holes, which can and do steam up. It can make understanding a verbal safe word very hard. So with something like that, it's incredibly important that safe gestures be employed and the person on the outside of the gas mask understands what garbled safe words might sound like, be highly attuned to that, and also always be paying attention for those safe words or safe gestures, especially the gestures. If you are engaging in breath play with a gas or other restrictive type mask and using it. So there is the breath play side of it. And by the way, if something goes wrong and bad, the newspapers or websites that cover the incident because it's a kinky thing, you will make the paper or the local news or the Daily Mail online. And it'll be auto erects, there's a wonderful auto I can't now that I'm going to talk about it, I can't think of the term. But there's a wonderful scientific term for it that they will use to describe the incident. So just make sure you know what you're doing, make sure that your partner or partners know what they're doing, and you have an incredible amount of trust with this because this definitely is something that, if done wrong, can take your life. So please, please, please make sure to fully understand and respect that when you engage in that. And speaking of, I know how we're not going to talk about how to do things. Once again, with this, please don't see a meme on the web that is a how to guide to do this meme. Seriously, they're out there. Don't use a meme or a picture that somebody posted on their blog or their FetLife account that shows how to do it. Um, don't rely on that. Invest the time, take a class, talk to experienced people, talk to both experienced tops and bottoms. So make sure that you fully understand how it's done, how to do it, no matter your role, and don't rely on some meme from the internet or some YouTube video, even if it is a highly respectable person giving the advice or people giving the advice, if you can, please do take an in-person class on this. And additionally, with breath play, the person who is doing it needs to be fully, trained on rescue breathing. You need to know how to do that if you're going to be the person controlling or restricting the airflow to another. So there we go. We finished the safety speech there. Now we're going to move on into when I was jotting some notes down, the part of it that made me think of Beavis and Butthead, and specifically Beavis going fire, fire, fire. Sorry, don't do a good impression of Beavis. At least I hope I don't. But we're going to talk about fire play. Um, Fire play really is designed to use fire to kind of create a heat sensation on the skin. Obviously, fire is something that is inherently seen as dangerous. So fire play obviously ticks the mental box of danger, danger, which of course adds to the psychological and physical thrill to enjoy and to play with fire because this is what we're doing. We are playing with fire. It's what Smokey the Bear warned us never to do. But here we are, grown adults, going to play with fire. What can go wrong, and how hard can it be? Actually, a lot can go wrong, and yes, it can be hard. There are three basic types of fire play in the lifestyle. First is um, we're going to sort of get on our magic top hat and maybe a magic wand, because what we're doing is we're taking something that magicians have used for really hundreds, I guess, well over 100 years it's been around, and it's called flash cotton. It's cotton that burns very brightly. It's a bright burning piece of cotton, and it burns incredibly quickly. In fact, it burns out almost as soon as you light it. Um, and it's what magicians use for their flash, where you see the quick flash of fire and smoke. That is what flash cotton is, and that's why magicians use it. No. Obviously, we're not pulling rabbits out of hats or body orifices when we are doing things in the kinky world with flash cotton. Um, so what we are doing is using it to sort of pass it over the skin. So the skin has that brief, intense sensation of heat. Since it burns out quickly, it is something that is not typically going to cause burns or issues. However, it is something that obviously needs to be very carefully done because even if it burns out quickly, if it falls on the skin while it's still on fire, obviously fire is hot and can cause burns. Or if we drop it on the ground and it lands on something flammable, it can quickly spark that, and we could have, in the words of Beavis, fire, 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 which would not be fun. So that is what flash cotton is, and it's more of in a way, it's more smoke and mirrors. Um, yes, it can be dangerous, but because it burns quickly and brightly, it's more about the psychological side than the physical, although it obviously causes physical sensations. And obviously, if things go wrong, there are um, bad things that can happen. But flash cotton is more of the smoke and mirrors mental side of it. Then there are fire wands, and what a fire wand is typically it's a tool that's made of metal, and on the one end of it, it has a wick on it, sort of like a handheld, I don't know, a handheld tiki torch, if you will. Please don't use the the oil that you put in a tiki torch with a fire wand. Please never do that. 'Cause the way it burns would not be good. But fire wands, the metal handle has the wick that is soaked in fuel, and of course it is lit. And what you can do is you can trace patterns on the skin with it. You can use some of the fuel, put that on the skin, so you light the fuel, um, and it quickly, flash fire burns off. So there's the heat and there's the flame that goes with it. It is once again something that creates more of a um, optical appearance, creating and driving the mental side than it does the physical. However, having fire, even flash fire on our skin for a brief second or two is obviously creates some unique and intense sensations. But the thing that's really important with fire wands is that the wick is well maintained. The person knows what they're doing, understands how to extinguish, um, something quickly that happened on the skin. If it doesn't immediately go out, that they understand this. They use the right type of fuel. I'm not going to mention the right type of fuel that you would learn when you took a class in it. Um, but you have to use the right type of fuel. Obviously, using something like what you would put in your tiki torch, the tiki oil type thing, not good because it's designed to burn for a long time. You don't want to use gasoline or diesel. Uh, there's a specific type of fuel that you want to use with this, which is highly recommended. But once again, take a class in it if this appeals to you. And no matter whether you're the top or bottom or you want to experience both sides of it, um, know what the other side should be doing or not be doing to make it safe. Because once again, playing with fire, there are a lot of dangers, which we all should know. Finally, this is an Olympic year. The Olympics are coming up this summer, and I am one of those nerdy people who likes the Olympic Games. You know, like I don't care to watch diving on a Saturday afternoon. But if diving's on during the Olympics, oh yeah, I'm all for it. I would probably not invest in going to watch somebody row, um, you know, do a rowing competition where boats, the specialty rowing boats go up and down a body of water. But during the Olympics, I find it very exciting. Same with track and field. Normally not my jam, but during the Olympics, very exciting. Even a marathon. I mean, how boring can that be? You're going to watch somebody run 26 miles, I think it is. But during the Olympics, yes, I will tune in and I will watch a marathon. And it's the same with the winter. Well, obviously, winter being a skier, it's much more my jam. I very much enjoy the Winter Olympics more than the summer because I've experienced I think more of it. I've gone down a bobsled course in a bobsled, not driving. They sort of don't let people do that, but you can take a ride with somebody who is a trained driver and go down a bobsled course. I've done that. It's very, very exciting, and a lot rougher than I thought. You bounce around quite a bit. Also in my fair state of Michigan, where I live, we have a luge track, and I have gone down the basic baby beginner track part of it on a luge. That was very exciting. The other thing in Michigan that we have is we have ski jumping hills. Imagine that. Granted, you have to journey to the upper peninsula of Michigan to go ski jumping. I have done it. I've done it. I took a weekend. They have classes in how to do it, which for me was incredibly hard. I have a fear of heights, if you didn't know that, and the whole ski jumping hill is an optical illusion. You really don't. You do get fairly high off the ground, but you don't. You're not crazy high off the ground like you would downhill skiing when you say would hit a dump or a kicker and fly into the air in a train park. You don't get that high, but boy, the optics of it are incredibly intense. And for somebody who was afraid of heights, it was a wow, absolutely mentally draining experience. But I did it. I'm glad I did it. Um, Not that I look forward to ever doing it again, but I can say that I've done it. Anyways, um, what got me talking and rambling about the Olympics and ski jumping, even though it's the summer games, is during the Olympics, you will see athletes that have experienced fire cupping. They do this as part of recovery. I think it's most prominently seen in the last Olympics, where I remember seeing it was with the swimmers, those that were competing in pools and whatnot. And maybe it was just because the swimmers with their swimsuits allowed more skin to be visible, so you could um, see the marks of fire cupping. And what fire cupping is it's a technique where um, specialty cups or glasses are heated with fire, then placed on the skin, and as they cool, they create a vacuum. Now, the therapeutic benefits of that for athletes, I'm not a kinesiology person, so I'm not really sure. Obviously, it must do something to relax or help the muscles recover. But they create a unique sensation, and once again, since we're using fire and a vacuum and putting something on the skin that's going to cause sort of the skin to be sucked into it. It creates a very erotic experience for some people who enjoy it. And basically, the process is that you put some um, cotton soaked in the right fuel inside of the cup, and as you sort of light the cotton that burns very quickly, the cup goes on the skin, and the process of doing that creates a vacuum. And then as the of course intensifies as the cup cools on the skin, pulling the skin kind of up into the cup. So it's very important to know what you're doing with this once again, because we are playing with fire and in close proximity to skin. So it's very important to know what you're doing to avoid burns. Also to know what to look for and what to look out for when it comes to adverse reactions to the skin with either the cup or the fire or the fuel. And since we do have these cups that are sort of vacuum packed, vacuum attached to the skin, you have to know how to safely remove them because you can do damage if you don't know how to get the cup off the skin. So it's very, very important that you know the safety side of it. So let's talk a little bit about the safety side of it. And once again, just in general. First of all, proper training, understanding how to do it, what not to do, and what to look out for. Proper training is so very key. And like I said, even if you are submissive or bottom, learn the proper training so that way you know if the person you are trusting with your life while doing any of these types of things knows what they're doing because you know what you're doing. Even though you don't want to be the one doing it, you know what the person who is doing it to you should be doing and not doing. And since we were just talking about fire, let's talk specifically about safety equipment to have handy when we are doing fire play. Of course, it goes without saying, fire extinguishers, and please, 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 people, do not have one of those little tiny fire extinguishers that is good for like one quick puff that you might find available cheaply at your local mega home improvement store. Step it up and buy a good sized fire extinguisher just in case if something goes wrong, you can put it out. And, in the meantime, stash it in you know, by your kitchen. So if you do have a little grease fire or something, you can put that out and make sure that you get a fire extinguisher that is capable of putting out the types of fuel that you will be using with it because certain fire extinguishers only put out certain types of fires. So do your homework there. Also, you have a burn kit along with a first aid kit on hand and handy for this. Not, yeah, I have it somewhere in this closet over here. Actually, have them if you're doing this, say, in a bedroom, you know, under the nightstand or in the top drawer of the nightstand so you know exactly where it is. Next, since we are playing with fire, make sure that the surface we are using as the background is fire safe so that it's not going to catch on fire if you drop a piece of flash cotton or if the flash cotton gets dropped and it doesn't flash out as quickly as it should. You've got a defective piece of flash cotton that you're not going to burn your house down or the wherever you're playing. So make sure that your surface area is, free of flammable materials and preferably fireproof or fire retardant. Um, so make sure to have that and investigate and do that. Now, clothing is very important. Make sure um, that no matter whether you're the top or the bottom in this, don't wear synthetic clothing when you're doing this. Um, if even if you're going to be wearing clothes, make sure they're natural fibers. Cotton would be a good choice. Synthetic materials in clothes, they don't tend to catch fire. For example, obviously we know cotton catches fire because we're talking about flash cotton. But yes, while cotton can burn, synthetic materials also can burn, but when they burn because they're plastics, they melt. And when melted plastic gets on the skin, it causes severe burns. So think of your clothing. Make sure that you are wearing something that is natural fibers. Um, or I guess if you really want to be safe, go to your local firehouse and steal some of your local firefighters to steal some of their bunker gear and go ahead and put that on. Um, but in all seriousness, make sure that you are wearing clothing that is not going to melt. Um, Also, we talked about having a fireproof or fire retardant area to do this in. Also, make sure that there is good ventilation, um, because things that burn obviously cause smoke, and smoke is not good to breathe. Although, if you want to send me a good cigar, I will puff and breathe that smoke. But that's just me. I don't recommend that for anybody else. It's one of my few vices. A good cigar from time to time. But that's a story for another day. But make sure that you're doing this in a well ventilated place, so that you don't breathe in smoke. Also, all of these types of scenes are dangerous. So the negotiation part before the scene is super critical. Understanding boundaries, safe words, discussing the risk. Even if you've both done it before, go through the risk again just to make sure. During the scene, this is one of those types of scenes where even if you're experienced partners, you need to be constantly communicating. Is that good? Are you still feeling good? Once again, start small, work your way up. Don't sort of go for the grand flaming finale right away. Start small, work up to it. And with all of these types of scenes, aftercare, aftercare, aftercare. It's so very, very important. Having creams for hydration, for the skin, hydration for the skin, obviously hydration for the person. Um, Make sure that obviously you're cleaning your implements afterwards, but also if you were doing, for example, edge play and there are scratches or slight cuts on the skin, make sure that those are tended to and treated properly. Aftercare is very, very, very important with this. And this is one of those activities that can lead to not only sub drop, but also because they're very intense and the top dominant or top is very into what's going on and very concerned and focused. This is the type of activity that can lead to dom or top drop. So it's very important, no matter what your role, to pay attention to your partner for the potential of drop afterwards, even with aftercare. Um, and it also is something that people typically have to be in the right headspace to enjoy, once again, no matter whether you're the top or bottom. So there is typically some mental preparation, either, getting yourself ready for it mentally, no matter, once again, your role. There will be some sort of mental prep that you have to go through, to have this experience be a positive one. And you also have to be able to manage both a combination of fear and adrenaline because you will experience both of those during this type of play. So it's very important to understand that and be prepared for it because it can and it will happen. And it's a very unique feeling. Even if you're the dom or the top, you will still have potentially, especially the first few times you do anything like this, fear because you are um, putting your submissive or bottom at risk. There's a fear of what can go wrong. And while Some dominants won't fess up to it. Sorry, gonna call bull crap on that. They definitely, it's in the back of the mind. It is. And there's also, of course, the adrenaline that comes with it. Once again, regardless of whether you are the top or bottom dom or submissive, there is adrenaline that comes into play when you play like this. So that is the long and the short of edge play. It is something that can be very stimulating for some people. It doesn't have to be your jam if it's not something you want to experience. It's also very important that sharp objects and fire, either one or both, can be triggers for people. So it's very important to talk about these in an open, uh, safe environment before even going down the road of negotiation. It's so very important to have those open and honest communications, and also understand that even if somebody you're engaging in this type of play with, it can suddenly trigger something unexpected during play. Once again, safe words, safe gestures, so important, and the trigger doesn't always. Most people tend to think triggers come from the submissive or bottom side. They can come from the dominant side or top as well. Um, for example, with knives or sharp objects, um, one of the things that sadly many people have experienced is they have been victimized by somebody wielding a sharp object. So even if it's a past trauma that we think we've processed and put away, engaging in play with it can be a trigger. And once again, it's something that, as a trigger, if impacts both dominant and submissives equally. So when you think triggers, especially with edge play, don't necessarily think the trigger is going to be triggering the submissive. It can trigger either role or both. So it's very, very important to have those conversations and be prepared for something unexpected like that to potentially pop up. And that is sort of a brief introduction or discussion of edge play. It's something that if you enjoy it, you enjoy it, and if you don't like it, typically people don't like it. And either way, it's absolutely fine. This doesn't have to be a yum. This does not have to be something that if you don't enjoy it, you're not into BDSM. It's not that at all. Then once again, it's very individualistic, and this can be a yum, or it doesn't have to be. So no matter what, if you do try it, experience it, please keep safety in the forefront of your mind and make sure that you have the proper knowledge, no matter your role, when you do engage in it. So finally, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to give this podcast a listen. I appreciate the investment so many of you make every week in the podcast and spending some time with me. I truly appreciate it. And I do want to just ask if you wouldn't mind to check out my website, chattingwiththelightkeeper.com. Send me your feedback. Or if you don't want to do that, check out my new little attempt over on Pinterest. It's nothing fancy. It's just, little lifestyle related, I guess we could call them lifestyle related memes that I've created, that are over on Pinterest. So, stop by, say hi, either or both of those places, or if you're on social media and you don't follow me, pretty much I'm on all the major socials, Facebook, X, um, Instagram, Threads, and now Pinterest. So please stop by, give me a follow, and thank you once again for listening. And I can't wait to chat with you again next week. So until then, have an awesome week, and I'll talk to you soon.